We all know that Nod-Krai is the boiling pot of all factions to fight for the moon and its power, but what if I told you that all of this started with just 3 factions and the original sin of Snezhnaya's ancestors? From elven abominations to human arrogation to voyagers and angel rebellions. Hey guys, what's up? Aru and welcome to the origins of Nod-Krai, the Kuvaki, and the Old Orders. In this episode, we're diving into the Kuvaki, the Force of the Moon, and how 3 ancient groups formed their entire way of life around it. In Nod-Krai, the war isn't foreign, it's more of a family feud. 3 native heirs of Hyperborea are fighting over who gets to see the moon. First, the Frostmoon Scions, priestly descendants who kept the moon rites and a prophecy on Heresy Isle. Second, the Snowland Fae, an engineered nobility made in Hyperborea from fallen Frostmoon light on giant bones, later ruled by the Belyate Tsar, the first Cryo Archon. Third is the modern Snezhnayan state, rising after the Belyate Tsar's death to centralize Kuvaki and the Force of the Moon. And what these 3 legacy factions have in common is that they want to use the moon and destroy the false radiance that is Celestia. If you've read the Luna 1 song of Nod-Krai, then you'll know exactly what I mean. I'll be posting a video on it soon, so also wait for that. Now, the bad blood starts with Hyperborea's first sin, creating the Fae by forbidden methods taught to them by the first angel who initially actually started everything in the first place, at least for Hyperborea. Now, the Frostmoon Scions took that as a proof that only an orthodox rite can handle the moon's power. Some of them repent and side with the Scions, but many still lean into the lineage as a right to rule. Today, the Pale Star Edict, Paha Isle Research, and caged Columbina idols turn moon sites into assets. The Scions call it a profanation, but the Snowland Fae are split in this matter. Meanwhile, the Fatui call this progress in their mission to destroy the fake sky and kill the heavenly principles. That's the core of Nod-Krai. Covenant versus lineage versus a mandate for long ago. Kuvaki is essentially primordial moonlight, a pre-elemental force that existed before the 7 split light into colors. It saturated every corner of Nod-Krai and possibly even the world. The climate, the soil, and the way the forests grow and the animals adapt. Even the strange calm or ruins clinging to certain waters still have that bit of primordial moonlight. But Kuvaki isn't just nature's background radiation or some form of moonlight phlogiston. It's the root of Nod-Krai's blood feud. Hyperborea's artisans first learned to shape it from the teachings of the first angel, forging rites that the Frostmoon Scions still preserve today. The Snowland Fae, meanwhile, were literally created from Kuvaki, elven flesh woven from Frostmoon light and the bone from giant beasts, raised under the Belyate Tsar as the first Cryo Archon. And after the Belyate Tsar's death, the balance collapsed. The Scions clung to their rituals and the Fae faded into networks and old shrines in the north. But now the Fatui under the Pale Star Edict cages Nod-Krai's moon idols in steel to siphon Kuvaki for machines and weapons. Each faction claims that they are the rightful heirs and rulers of this moon power, the Scions through the ritual, the Fae through blood alone, and the Fatui through conquest and air quotes progress. That's why every shrine and battlefield and conspiracy here loops back to the Kuvaki, because whoever controls this force controls the very root of the moon's power. Long before the 7, the world belonged to the sovereign dragons led by Nibelung. Their root forces include the Kuvaki, light in its undivided primordial state. But when the primordial one Phanes imposed a new sky, the dragons fell and their powers were split into 7 elements so the humans could survive. The moons themselves who were raised alongside these dragons betrayed their own kin, becoming the 3 moon sisters who ruled under the primordial one's order, while a 4th moon never actually fully formed. And that 4th moon was supposed to be Columbina. Nod-Krai is the scar of that failure, a land from the fragment of the unborn moon where Kuvaki still leaks into the soil and sky. This is where all the inside conflicts take root. After learning from the rebellious First Sealy, Hyperborea's people and king, now defying the heavenly principles, used Kuvaki to craft new beings. The ancestors of the Snowland Fae and the Scions inherited rites taught by the first angel as well. To the Fatui, Kuvaki is simply another tool to cage and weaponize and use against the heavenly principles. But to the Scions and the Fae, it is a sacred right and power bound to ancient vows that reach back to the very first sin of Hyperborea, the betrayal of the dragons, and the moon's divided legacy. Every clash in Nod-Krai is haunted by that betrayal, because whoever claims Kuvaki isn't just fighting for power here. They're reopening an argument as old as the world itself. Should the light of the moon serve the heavens, dragons, or mankind, or maybe even both at the same time. Hyperborea isn't just a ruin, it's the archetype of the paradise that was lost. In the game's myth, it was the golden land beyond the north, a realm of eternal springs and first humanity across a wide space of water which is now frozen, where Kuvaki moonlight was first worshipped and now engineered for their selfish ambitions. Now the lore links to countless sacred lands in real life, like the Garden of Eden, the Celtic Nirnanog, or the Russian Opana and Belovodi. Northern Utopia is ruled by what's called a White Tsar, where peasants lived free, and in Snezhnaya's own memory, the Belyate Tsar echoes that role as the first Cryo-Archon, the White Tsar, and the Lord of the Fae, ruling the Northlands from a paradise across the frozen sea. So you can imagine what Snezhnaya is going to look like once we finish Nod-Krai. But Hyperborea fell by arrogation and ambition, the same first sin that runs through Tevat's many myths. Just as the first Seelie rebelled to raise mankind to godhood, where they walk among the gods, Hyperborean artisans and the king himself used forbidden moon rites taught by the first angel to forge the Snowland Fae. In doing so, they trespassed against the heavenly principles. And once the heavenly principles found out, celestial nails rained down on that kingdom. The paradise was shattered and the first Seelie was crushed. What survives today are fragments. The Frostmoon Scions guarding their rights, who were the descendants of Hyperborea, the Snowland Fae as living remnant of that forbidden act, and the memory of a kingdom that claimed too much for their own rule. And the real kicker for all of this is that Snezhnaya itself sits on the ruins of Hyperborea. So they have all the knowledge and the power and the technology to create all of these things, which actually backs up why they're the most technologically advanced region today, and is also the most powerful. The Tsaritsa's nation rises from the same ground that was once the Golden Land, meaning today's Fatui's ambitions are walking the same path as their ancestors, trying to claim and control a power born from Kuvaki and the moons. But Nod-Krai isn't just another frontier or a city-state. It's the stage where the past is breaking back into the present, but with better intentions, where old sins and new factions collide in a struggle over the same forbidden light. The Snowland Fae are Snezhnaya/Nod-Krai's lineage tied to the earliest Cryo Order and historically to the Belyate Tsar, the first Cryo-Archon, and the Lord of all Fae. Under his reign, they ruled the Northlands before the Cataclysm, and after his death, they lost open control but still exert influence through old rites, in networks, and shrines farther in the mountains. Hyperborean records say that they were made, created, an act later remembered as the First Sin of the North, by Hyperborean artisans and the king himself using forbidden methods taught by the first angel. Because of that origin, their ritual grammar predates the Seven. The Snowland Fae have the right to rule and use Kuvaki through inherited life alone rather than moon wheels and common sigils. The Snowland Fae sit between the Scions' rights only and the Tsaritsa/the Fatui's push to centralize and weaponize Kuvaki. Some Fae circles still revere the Belyate Tsar and quietly questions whether the Tsaritsa seeks to reseat a lunar power without the covenant that once bound the Northlands, basically bringing back the Moon Order but not with its sacred traditions. While others would argue that aligning with the state of Snezhnaya is the only way to protect Fae lineages from extinction, which is why Pulcinella is there. And once we meet these Snowland Fae, expect them to leverage the bone sites they were created from or old shrine rites to control who may approach moonlight fragments. Basically the middle ground to negotiate from both sides, which fits well with why the Snowland Fae tend to do politics within Nod-Krai and Snezhnaya, and why Pulcinella is likely a Snowland Fae, allying with the Scions when idols are threatened and cutting deals with the Fatui when it preserves their houses. The Snowland Fae themselves are in sort of a conflict of their own at this point, but their core dilemma remains unchanged since Hyperborea, which is to atone for the sin by guarding Kuvaki under their rule, under their inheritance, or reclaim power by sharing in the state's machine. The Frostmoon Scions are the last living descendants of Hyperborea's proper moon-worshipping people, the good side of Hyperborea that simply worshipped the moon and wouldn't have taken part in Hyperborea's heresy. Their base is the scattered ruin of the Heresy Isle, the spiritual heart of Nod-Krai, with unmechanized moon statues, shrine rings, and luminous flora, and roaming Frostmoon elk that mark their territory. For 5 centuries and probably even older, they've kept to that old way, maintaining the rites, enforcing taboos, taboo law and seating the rightful heir of Kuvaki through ritual rather than machines. You'll also notice that they deliberately avoid open war, which will likely change if you read the Song of Nod-Krai. Basically, the Scions see Hyperborea's first sin, the making of the Snowland Fae from Frostmoon light and giant bones, as proof that only an orthodox rite may handle Kuvaki safely, one that is closer to the moons than it is to humans. And those rites themselves trace back to that first angel, like I said, a rebel against the heavenly principles, which I theorize to be Nicole from the Hexenzirkel, who is depicted with angel-like wings and halo. The first angel's desire was simply to have humans walking together with the gods. That's it, and yet she was punished greatly for it. The Scions preserve these angelic protocols as their rulebook. To them, mechanizing a moon is a repeat of the original sin. Their present creed carries and finds a single song, the Song of Welkin Moon, which is a prophecy passed down through generations that the moon goddess will return and must be seated correctly. Lama herself says that that prophecy has already come to pass, though not quite, pushing the Scions to tighten their circles and prepare the enthronement, or rather succession rites, for the old moon to pass her authority to the new moon. From their point of view, everything that the Fatui are doing violate the original moon order, and stealing ancient relics of the past is that final line. So expect the Scions to, at some point after this scene here, rally from Heresy Isle, defend their shrines, and push back with their path to moonlight, ancestral rites, relic custody, and controlled moon wheels, against any faction who's trying to industrialize or weaponize Kuvaki. In short, if Nod-Krai is a contest over who gets to seat the moon, then the Frostmoon Scions are the faction insisting that there's only one proper way, and repeating Hyperborea's sin is not it. Now, if you line these three factions up, a single origin emerges. Hyperborea is the root, a northern golden realm where people kept the moon's law and practiced crafts that the heavenly principles would later call forbidden. From that origin comes two surviving factions. First, the Snowland Fae, created by Hyperborean heretics who seem to have taken rule after the fall of Hyperborea and led by the Belyi Tsar, rising as the first Cryo-Archon and the Lord of the Fae, ruling the Northlands and creating Snezhnaya. Second is the Frostmoon Scions, the priestly heirs of Hyperborea's moon worship, keeping shrines and prophecy on Heresy Isle and insisting that moon power must be seated by right and not by machines. When the Belyi Tsar fell 500 years ago, this is likely when the remnants of Hyperborea's heretics took control. The Fae's open rule ended and their influence thinned, but their networks and the Scions' rights still survived, even though it was taken over. In the current day, Snezhnaya's Tsaritsa and the Fatui aim to own what Hyperborea once served, the moon's energy and Kuvaki, which is in essence to repeat what Hyperborea couldn't complete. On Paha Isle, caged idols and research under the Pale Star Edict signal a shift from taking care of Columbina to extracting her from the Scions and her being the sacrifice meant to destroy the sky. But to the Scions, that's an act of heresy and a repeat of the original sin of humans. To the remnants of the Snowland Fae, it's a power grab and political ladder built on their origin secrets. The stakes climb if the moons themselves are political, because in the origins of Teyvat, the moons belonged to Nibelung's Dragon Order and later bent over to the heavenly principles. If that allegiance can change, then today's contest looks like a realignment attempt. The Tsaritsa is trying to pull lunar authority out of the heavenly principles' orbit and seat it in Snezhnaya, while the Scions argue that only the original rites can safely enthrone that power. That's why Columbina and the new moon's prophecy, the Scions' prophecy, decides whether Nod-Krai returns to Hyperborea's covenant, stays under the primordial sky, or births a third path, which is a fourth moon order. And that's Nod-Krai in its current form, a land built on fragments of a moon that never was, where the Scions, the Snowland Fae, and the Fatui each claim the right to Kuvaki, and try to correct and probably even repeat the original sin of Hyperborea. But I need to ask you guys one thing, and tell me down in the comments if you've made it this far. First is, will a prophecy of the entire Archon quest be hiding behind the same song of their people? For anyone who has read the Song of Nod-Krai, tell me what you guys think, because I'm making that video next. The more pressing question is, if Hyperborea was the first sin, then maybe these factions today are only playing out a much older conflict, one that began with the moons betraying the dragons and the primordial one rewriting the sky, as well as why exactly eventually Nibelung left and returned with the Abyss, which actually makes sense when you think about the Tsarits' plan to take over the said fake sky and to burn the old world. They're trying to bring back the old Dragon Order, which is the same thing that I've been saying for these many videos. They're trying to bring back the old world of the dragons. The final question is, if the moon's power was never meant for humans and is originally for the dragons, what happens when humanity finally succeeds in taking it? Will it be salvation for Nod-Krai and Snezhnaya, or maybe even the world as a whole, or the start of another cycle of ruin? For now, that's gonna be it for me, so I'll see you guys in the next one, yeah? And I really suggest you guys watch this one because there is a lot that a single song can tell us. As always, like, comment, and subscribe, for my ramblings, and stay mad, theorists. Bye!